Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Before we start the show, we'd like to give our condolences to the family of Alex Grizz-Wiley, a great All Black coach with a 91% winning record, a Canterbury man who did so much winning the Shield with that Canterbury team in the 80s, and of course, he was a good player as well, played 11 tests for the All Blacks. So our condolences to his family. We've got a bit to talk about this week. We'll talk about Rieko Ioane and who is the All Black centre. We'll talk a little bit about the Chiefs and how they looked superb against Moana Pasifika. The Reds, are they the real deal after going down to the Highlanders and winning down there in Dunedin? We'll also talk a little about New South Wales getting up over the Brumbies. Plenty to talk about this week in the show. Bringing you guest in studio, James Parsons.
Here we are.
Just stoked to be here.
I'm ready, Bryn. I am ready.
Oh, I am. I think I can see the enthusiasm on Jipper's face to be able to talk about in depth, I guess, the Crusaders or the Blues. But in saying that, we did get under the pump a little bit last week, Ross, reading in the comment section that we don't talk about anybody else. So I feel we've got to share the love and been able to talk about other teams other than just the Crusaders and the Blues, which I think our viewers probably thought was a bit too much last week.
It's only the game of the round.
Yeah, it is what it is. And it all evens out over the length of the season. But we did cop a lot of grief about the Blues and Crusaders. But we're going to start with All Black selections this week because your emails came flooding in, as they do whenever teams with Rieko Ioane in them lose. We get emails saying, why is this guy the All Black centre? Should it be somebody else? And, you know, multiple All Black coaches have decided in a row that he is the guy wearing the 13 jersey. So we thought, rather than kind of avoid it and not talk about it, having talked about it plenty of times before, let's get into the detail of what Rico's good at, why, and how does he compare, say, to Anton Leonard-Brown or Billy Proctor, who shouldn't be too far away from coming back from his Achilles injury, and what is the best setup there for the All Blacks at 13? So I think probably we'll start with what happened on the weekend. He had, 3 errors on the weekend, Jipper, that really kind of stood out. But was his performance that bad? And what is it that he's doing well to counteract that?
Yeah, look, I looked at his game. I actually thought, believe it or not, it was one of his better games in the sense of how, I suppose, many touches he got, how impactful, certain things I look for is, when there's a line break, who's going to be in that frame, in that picture frame, trying to make a play to stop a try, and I think it is well known that Reeks' strength is defence. It's his speed and his ability to defend in one of the hardest positions, if not the hardest position on the field, and understanding that his pace sometimes is what he sees to take rather than maybe feed the outside. We've spoken at length over a number of years around Billy's ability and Anton's ability and so forth. So I don't think there's going to be any new sort of information, but I don't think there is an appreciation for what he does. If you look at the game on the weekend and you look across the 13s, across every game, his stats are out and out. He's 100 running metres more than Len Ekitau, who was next to over the weekend. So I think those errors, I think he only had 3 total before this game, but I think because he had more touches, sometimes those errors, are obviously going to increase. But, the numbers still say, 91% gain line, 75% line and quick ball when he carries. So he's getting the team on the front foot. It's quick ball, they can play on top. He had 8 passes, 12 carries, line breaks, we could go through it all. I think he's a world-class centre, but I believe his strength at the international game is his defence and his ability to do stuff other centres can't do. And defence is massive.
Yeah.
I think, the adage defence wins championships, that's test match footy, week in, week out.
Brendan, when you look at Rico's game and you look at the game of the other centres doing the rounds, do you feel like it's fair that he's constantly being knocked for not being the right guy at 13?
Well, I think he's an experienced player, and you don't play that many test matches and from different coaches to be able to not be selected. So, look, there's obviously a couple of errors that happened on the weekend. That just comes part and parcel sometimes when you might be trying a little bit too hard or it just doesn't go your way. But the stats that Jip touched on, he has influenced the game in terms, I think, with that Blues attack. Now, last year was a little bit different in terms of the way that they did play. They played a lot more tighter, being able to go through the middle, pick and goes. And so I think the evolution of this Blues team, and even though they're not getting the results, they are spreading the ball a little bit wider. And I guess one little thing that we have touched on with Rieko in the past is probably his distribution skills, but on the weekend, he had 9 or 10 passes that he was able to get that ball away. So I think it was more so probably just the unforced errors of the timing of when it happened and how easy it was. Do you know what I mean? So, and to be honest, who really at the moment is putting their hand up in 13 consistently in New Zealand at the moment? Do you know what I mean? Billy Proctor isn't playing a lot of rugby.
No, I think Anton is. Like, Anton's playing, I'd say, career best form at centre. Like, his relationship at the moment with Quinn, I don't know, those two look world class in the way they're operating. And Anton, I think you could easily say if there was to be a form centre, he would definitely have that spot. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I did. What I was going to carry on and say is that other than obviously Anton, who's proven and is playing really well, other than that, there's really no other centres that have played enough minutes in terms of being able to have a newbie that would come into that All Black selection for number 30, I believe. We touched on Braden Enor. His performance last week didn't play this week, and Dallas McLeod obviously played centre and played well on the weekend. But I agree with Anton Lienert-Brown. He's always going to be there in and around 12 or 13. And with the way he is playing, of course, warranted in selection at number 13. I'm just referring to the guys that aren't in that All Black environment now that are playing centre. There's not really one that you'd be able to say, oh, he should be picked in as a newbie, other than Anton Lienert-Brown and Rieko Ioane.
Anton Lienert-Brown has the fewest tackles missed. Anton Lienert-Brown has the most defenders beaten. He is topping a lot of lists here. When it comes to turnovers won, he's the best out of the centres who are there. Obviously, Tavatavanawai is a second five, so he would top that for second fives, but Anton Lienert-Brown for centres. So it appears like his stats really back up the fact that he is, right now, if you're picking on straight up form. The problem with this comparison, I suppose, is that the Chiefs are playing their house down and there are opportunities. The Blues are struggling across the board with set piece and all sorts of issues. And Billy Proctor's not playing at all.
Yeah, it's quite a hard argument to have. But I think, like, even if you look at the stats, like David Havili crushed it the other night. Everyone will say that. But there was still errors in that performance, and I do think it is right. Like, there is a lot of people out there that just seem to relish getting into Rieko. And I just think if you look at the stats alone, he is still world class. He's making stuff out of nothing. He's the one that's sprinting from the other side of the field to get across to tackle Will Jordan and dislodge that ball over the line. All those sorts of things people miss. Because they're looking for the 3 turnovers that, yes, they were at crucial times, and yes, for his standards, with 3 previous to that game, he'll admit that was too high.
He made the fewest turnovers of all the centres before that game.
Yeah, and I suppose I don't mind seeing him being a little bit more ambitious. I really liked his performance on the weekend because he made line breaks. He got line breaks himself, and yes, the errors are there, but maybe needs to happen just to release his shackles and get that, I suppose, attacking weapon that we know he can be.
One of the other things that we saw in the statistics, Bryn, is that Rieko's ruck effectiveness is 100%. So when there is a ruck set out in Rieko's channels, the Blues get the ball back.
Whether you're an outside back, or a centre, it's really important to be able to win those breakdowns. And so, you have to remember as well, Rieko did play a little bit of sevens back in his day, which in turn, obviously, a lot of clean-outs and breakdown work has to be done there. And so, whenever you do see him cleaning on the rucks, you're right, it's really quick, and the efficiency of his technique and being able to, I guess, land on top or get that really good go-for ball for the Blues is really good. So, and at the international level, I think it's really important. You've got to be able to have your outside backs to be able to clean rucks, and the nitty-gritty of being able to play it up-tempo. You've got to be able to have that. So it definitely is one positive that Rieko has done, and it's the unseen work that Jip and I are kind of touching on, that probably the local punter doesn't really understand that he is doing some really good things. It's just been able to be highlighted with a few unforced errors, which, everybody's human and makes those errors, but I guess it is seen in more of in a light because, Rieko's an experienced All Black, played a lot of footy, and the expectation probably, right, with him being in the All Blacks is a little bit higher than probably most of the others in New Zealand at the moment.
Yeah, and I think he hit the ground running at wing, and then not everyone liked him moving from the wing to centre because everyone wanted him on the wing. So there is that element of frustration for some people that still would like to see him on the wing. But if you look at the All Black coaching staff and the language they've used, if we use Wallace Satiti, for example, when they said it's the work he's done both sides of the ball and off it, is why he got in, and that theory proved right, and that's why he was so quick to, like a duck to water for international test rugby. It's no different what they're seeing. in Rieko in terms of that off the ball stuff, and those are the things that matter most within defensive systems, because you are going to be broken. You are going to be broken. It's impossible to get through a game with not being broken. Okay, what do you do when that break happens? And he comes to life. He looks to make a play. He doesn't hide. He doesn't become a passenger. He lights up. And, you know, so often there's that frustration is like some players only light up on attack. Both sides of the ball, Rieko lights up and he tries to get in a position where he can make a play. And I think that is why multiple All Black coaches and selectors continue to, you know, see him as a strong candidate to start in that 13 jersey at international level.
Now, we interviewed Rieko in the pre-season. Much of what was in that interview obviously doesn't really stand now, considering what they look like in the pre-season and what the Blues look like now. But I still think it's an interesting exercise to play it out for you, because it might give a little bit of an insight into what Rieko Ioane is away from the field. He seems to have haters for, you know, his bravado and his bulge and the way that he is on the field, his confidence. This might be an interesting insight for you into what he does when he's not playing rugby. Okay, welcome back to the show, Rieko Ioane. Rieko, last time you were here, we didn't have Jipper. He missed out on all of the Blues, and he was...
I was disappointed.
There were tears.
Yeah.
There were tears.
I was disappointed too, mate.
Yeah, oh, mate, I missed you.
No, you didn't.
So he's going to promise you some technical questions. He wants to hear you say down lines at least 3 times.
There's one thing I am going to ask, because you're quite you're a big personality on the field, but you're quite modest off it. And I do want to unveil something about yourself. Is how much, you know, you spoke about that the Blues winning the title was big. Like, Auckland means a hell of a lot to you.
Yeah.
But also the time you give up to be down at junior rugby at Musters, you know, doing sausage, you and Aki at Ponsonby Rugby Club. Like, this city, Ponsonby, I suppose the younger generation coming through, you put a lot of time and effort that people don't see.
Exactly what you said. Like, I love this city. I love Auckland, and I love, you know, everything about all of the clubs that I've been involved with. And, you know, it sort of started off not by choice that Aki and I were always down at Ponies, you know, but we were following mum and dad around, and then it sort of became, as you said, like a lifestyle habit. And so it's awesome to be down and around there. But yeah, like I'm just love the city.
Is it quite cool going down and sort of offloading some knowledge on the kids and doing all that kind of stuff? Or are you just there shaking hands and making sure they're smiling and having a laugh?
Look, I'm no coach, but anytime I can get down there, you know, I think just being down and around is sort of, I feel is impact enough, because I remember, you know, when the All Blacks used to be down there and sort of having a beer in the club rooms or walking around watching trainings, watching games, you know, how much that stood out for me. And so to be able to do the same and sort of hopefully have that impact is sort of just what I'm after. But yeah, no coach. No coach.
Fair enough. The Blues, cracking season last year. Have you had a chance to sit down and reflect a bit and think about why it was so good?
Oh, you know, there's so many things, so many factors of why we were so good last year, but it's the beauty of it. It was last year, and you know, this is a new year, and you know, we've got our sights set on new goals and new horizons, and VC's got us got the team looking good.
You love VC? Yeah. Caleb was just talking
Everyone
about
loves him. I've just have not heard one player not glow when you bring him up.
He's a great man, and like everyone sort of had their, you know, and ahhing when he first arrived. Then he's adapted to, you know, we have such a young group, and you know, you can probably tell that our Blues team in particular is different to all the other teams. You know, we're very, very out there in terms of our personalities and the way we are, the way we act, because that's just who we are. And you know, VC hasn't tried to dim that down in any way. You know, he's, if anything, encouraged it more. But his trust with like you said, like any of the boys, and you know, and then it got to a point. You know, we picked up I was injured as sort of back half of the season, a couple of concussions and whatnot, and we just had AJ step up, and then we had Corey Evans step up, and then we had, you know, boys were ready, and boys had played those games, so we had full faith in them coming into that finals run.
Yeah, AJ Lane was a monster last year.
He was good.
Oh, mate, you should see this, yeah, mate.
He must be knocking on the door.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he's different gravy, that fella. He's bloody, honestly, like on attack especially, like one of the most gifted bloody attackers I've seen. You know, footwork's crazy, but you know, to go with it, he's got that mongrel in him on defence. Hey, those land boys have a streak in them, so he's eyeing up for a great year.
It makes good decisions too, eh?
Oh, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long season for you, man. Like when you go all the way through to the end of November.
Yeah.
What do you do to turn off when you get to December? Are you like, man, I'm out of here? What are you up to?
Yeah, look, I'm usually a homebody, but you know, things sort of change. So Aki's obviously moved to Japan, so I shot off to Japan with the family for Christmas and spent some time there, give him some company because he's missing home a bit. And then, yeah, look, I just like to chill with my animals. Me and my fiance, you know, we don't get up to a lot really. We're just very much homebodies that, yeah, walk our dog, play with our cats, that's it.
Bit of gaming in there, though.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, a bit of
a lot of gaming, a lot of gaming, but yeah, very much.
What's the game of choice at the moment?
League of Legends.
Okay.
League of Legends is the game. Yeah, I've been playing it for
So Fortnite's done?
Oh, mate, nah, Fortnite's done, mate.
It's done.
Yeah, yeah, nah, I'm cooked at that. Yeah, League of Legends.
Okay, last question. There's a World Cup coming up.
Yeah.
You've been granted 3 selections.
I've been granted.
Current player, former player, and a coach to take along with you. Who are you taking?
Coach, I'll take VC, former player, James Parsons.
Oh, don't.
Hey, what?
Oh, you're
mate.
full of it, mate. You're full of it.
Imagine you and VC.
Oh,
Imagine
yeah.
that. Imagine that combo.
Oh, it'd be too intense.
And a current player, Paddy. Those 3. Patrick Tupelotu.
Be a lot of line-outs.
Mate, you'd almost guarantee the World Cup with those 3.
You're just talking rubbish. Eh?
Yeah.
It's good to see. Hey, it's good to see you haven't lost your sense of humour.
Jipper was like another coach, was he? He's bringing that game.
Let's not go down that path. Let's not go down that path.
Coach, is it?
Yeah. I wouldn't survive now. It would be a 7-minute podcast.
Oh, mate.
It'd get me in the gym.
Yeah, oh, mate.
I'm better at gymming now than when I played.
Yeah?
Yep. There you go. Humble too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because you used to be able to bench 180 when you played, so must have gone up there, no?
Too handy. No, thanks, Freaks.
No,
great to have you on, mate.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. Now, Jipper, what I find interesting about that, I remember being at City Kickboxing, watching Israel Adesanya early on in his career. You know, he's a very, bolshy guy. He's got a lot to say. He's confident. And it does stir some people up who don't really like him. But then I saw him with his teammates' kids and with his teammates' families and the way that he treated them. And it created this full picture that you don't necessarily see of a person that, it changes your opinion.
Yeah. Look. I mean, I've got so much time for Riek, so he's a really, really good human. And you don't see the fact he's down at junior club, cooking a barbecue or serving pints or, reffing games, and he does it because he loves it. He doesn't put it on social media, he's just passionate about Ponsonby rugby and what they've given to him and his family. And I just think, it's the same thing with, kids and his teammates. He'd give people the shirt off his own back. He's a very loyal, generous friend. So, look, hopefully, I think even with the Adesanya comparison, you can't go into that octagon or you can't cross that white line without belief in yourself. And I think society's changed in the way that we sometimes express that belief as individuals, which is totally fine as well. And you're not... I mean, I think everyone will know, maybe this has changed, but the old 80-20 rule, you're not going to please everyone. I think that's what's got them there. That's the reality. That's why they're in the top 1% of athletes that can actually go and, I suppose, do it under the bright lights. And you can't lose that. You can't hide away from that, I don't think. And it's obviously what makes them tick, and there'll be an element of that confidence puts a little bit of performance pressure on him as well, that he's got to live up to and he's got to prepare to. And that's good for, I suppose, that mindset of continuously wanting to get better, not sitting still. And I think we've seen throughout Rieko's career that he does continuously want to go get better. I think there'd be very few people that played on the wing at international rugby the way he did that wanted to move to centre. But he's done it.
Give you a feeling for what the emails look like that we received this week. Here's a couple of them. Ruben DeToy sent this. I've been watching Super Rugby closely, and the fact of the matter is that the All Blacks over the last couple of years have one issue. They are selecting players who are not good enough in their position merely because they have a certain number of caps. He doesn't say Rieko's name, but he finishes by saying Billy Proctor should be given all the game time this year. So it was pretty clear what he was talking about. The next one was from Macho, and Macho said, I want to talk about Geordie and Rieko. I've not seen enough in the 3 to 4 years of this combination that it works. They're in the top 5. They're not in the top 5 worldwide, who he considers Italy, Scotland, South Africa, Argentina, and France, and Australia not far behind. So will Razor change things up? He feels that Tavatavanawai and Proctor would be the way to go. Tavatavanawai he calls the birth child of Malcolm Marx and Ma'anonu, which is actually not a bad call, to be fair. And he likes Conrad Smith-esque performances from Billy Proctor. So, Brenna, if you were to be picking your All Black 12 and 13, knowing that Geordie's going to be back and that Rieko's around, Anton Leonard-Brown's in really good form and Billy Proctor's likely to be back, Tavatavanawai is playing the house down as a 12 and on the wing on the weekend, who would you be selecting as your starting 12-13 against France?
Look, I think a lot of those guys that you have touched on, like Tavatavanawai, I think deserves to have a look in terms of being in that All Black squad with the way that he's played and the versatility that he has. But like, I think 2 guys that I think for me are probably the best combination right now with their form of how they've played. Anton Leonard-Brown, which we've touched on. He's had a great start to the year and is very proven in terms of being able to play for the All Blacks, whether it is 12 or 13. But, I'd have him at 13 if based on form right now. And at 12, I'd probably have David Havili. I know Geordie Barrett's going to be able to come back, and no doubt he'll be, the incumbent, the vice captain. But look, I think if he's not playing, or they want to transition him slowly and reward the form of David Havili, because I think he's having his best year at 12. I think he was pivotal in terms of that game against the Blues on the weekend, his triple threat game that he has, his run, pass, kick. And I think this year his collision area in terms of the ball in hand has been probably the best at his 12 at the Crusaders, and probably, hopefully, whether that's going to be able to go to the international level, I'm not too sure. But I think with the form that I'm seeing with David Havili at the moment and how pivotal he's been with the Crusaders, I'd have David Havili and I would have Anton Leonard-Brown at 13 if you're not going to pick Rieko at 13.
Yeah, and I think you just have to see the growth of Taha Kemara to understand how big an influence Dave Havili's performances are at the moment. The amount of pressure he takes off by stepping up to first receiver, looking to create plays. I spoke about Rieko creating plays. Well, David's no different. Like he wants to make plays. Like he will put himself in the position to make those plays, and his form is notably, warranting All Black selection. However, I just don't. It's out of sight, out of mind. Like, we cannot forget how good Geordie is. Like, I just think his numbers from last year were streets ahead of any other second 5, and he's doing some pretty. He hasn't gone to Japan. He's gone over to Leinster to get better. Like, that's a big difference. It's a big change of mindset. Don't underestimate what I suppose information he's collating on himself and growing to bring back here, and I think will be another evolution of what we've seen of Geordie Barrett. Like, that is a mission. He's gone on a mission to be the world's best 12. Not go to Japan. He has gone on a mission to be the world's best 12. I think we get a much better player back after his time up there.
Yeah, interestingly, if we were to take Geordie Barrett out of the equation and only look at players who are currently playing Super Rugby, when you look at the stats, the only player in Super Rugby who has the same stat lines as Geordie Barrett, Bryn, is David Havili. When it comes to passes, touches, break assists, the passes that put other players into gaps, kicks, those kind of things. All the other 12s are hard-running, direct 12s. Really only Geordie Barrett and Dave Havili are the guys who are the second playmaker.
Yeah, look, that's Davey's strength, and I think the way the Crusaders have played, even when Warren Quadra is here as well, that second pivot and being able to have a triple threat was pretty important in terms of being able to use the attacking strengths of the Crusaders. And so, look, like I said, I think Davey, for this first part of the season, has been able to do all of that. Look, there was a couple of times in their game against the Blues, for Preston's first try, to be able to show that kind of ball-carrying ability, to be able to beat people one-on-one and with brute strength, which we probably haven't seen, which we probably don't think with Davey, but I think he's shown that growth in his area of being able to win collisions a lot more than he probably has in the past, being at number 12. And then you look at that kind of bridge pass that he had for Shea Fihaki, being able to shape for a kick, but then able to see the space with a bridge pass, with his distribution skills there, I think, is arguably one of the best that I've seen in my time. So I think all his triple threat game sits perfectly with the Crusaders, with the way that they do play. Now, the challenge is, when Geordie does come back, and if Davey does get an opportunity, is can he have that same kind of flow at the international rugby when everything's a little bit tighter, a little bit closer, and probably the collision area isn't probably to where the Crusaders are at the moment, playing on top of teams. But yeah, I think it's been a great start for him, and I think a 12, now, and Jippy, you could probably, what you think around this, but you've got to be able to have a triple threat game. You run, pass, kick, and that's definitely a skill set that Davey has as a number 12.
And I think having players like Geordie and Davey gets away from the absolute need to have dual pivots. Because they're almost it. Like, David Havili's a pivot. Like, he is running the cutter at the moment out there, and as mentioned, growing Taha Kimura and sort of not exposing them too much at the moment. But I think, is the game plan of the All Blacks going to allow that? And I think that's where selection comes down to as well. Is like, okay, what style are they wanting to play? Are the coaches wanting to play? And okay, well, what players fit into that style? That style of play is big in terms of how, so like if a Will Jordan is the fullback, then you have to think of Geordie, Dave Havili, or let's go look at the best 12, or who we think's the best 12, Delande. It's very similar to a Dave Havili game in terms of he's a distributor, he can run the tough line, he can, make an impact defensively at the breakdown. So if he's currently the best in the world at 12, can we get a game plan that allows Dave Havili to perform like he does for the Crusaders?
Yeah. Can Dave Havili run the tough line in Test footy? Does he have the size? And, Geordie Barrett is direct, and he's very good at being able to play both direct and as a playmaker. Does Dave Havili have that in his game to a test level?
Yeah, I definitely think you have to think he does. Like, don't forget, like when the Crusaders went on that six in a row title wins, he was a big part of being that frontline 12 that would create space for Moana, or, he would have the hard line and he'd give the little short balls to his, outside setter, whoever it may be throughout those years. So, and he ran the hard lines. What he's good at, is he's not just going to run a hard line into a brick wall. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's going to make great decisions around when to do that, how to do that, who else is potentially in space. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's not like, okay, we just need a 12 to crash it up here. He will know when to strike and when to do that, and that's what I think his biggest strength is his decision-making ability on what the defensive pitches are in front of him, and then, I suppose, taking that to task and exposing it.
Now, I suppose everyone's talking about Tavatavanawai. So, Bryn, if you look at Tavatavanawai and his form at 12 and what he could bring to the All Blacks in comparison to David Havili, obviously being a fan of his triple threat game for Havili, what odds do you give Tavatavanawai of busting into that position? Do you think it's likely?
Look, I think it is hard because I think, in the past it's, All Black selectors are pretty loyal in terms of who they do select, and it's very rarely do you kind of see someone come and, as a bolter. But I think considering how he's played, and, the thing that I've been most impressed, we know how great of a ball carrier he is, and he's shown that on the wing, but even more so when he's been at 12. But the two things that I think that make him different is his breakdown turnovers, which I think is really important to be able to have as a midfielder, and he's probably the best in the competition, not only as a 12, but as an out-and-out fetcher. You could put his names alongside Mick Ryden being able to get that ball, in the turnover area. So, that's a massive attribute that he has that I don't think any other midfielder has, which I think is his point of difference. And then I think as well, his ability to be able to, I guess, kick the ball. I didn't see that in terms of when he was on the wing with the Highlanders, but he has shown that he has showed an array of kicking skills, whether it was in attacking kicks or we've seen some 50-22s he's been able to get off counter-attack. So he has those traits, which I've seen pretty early on in this part of the year, to be able to have that. Now, the pressure, the probably the one thing for Jimmy is that he hasn't played a lot at 12. And do the All Blacks really want to be able to put him in that position to be able to starting 12 with not many games at 12? But I think the good thing about that environment is whether they can, when they do bring new people in, they're able to evolve and been able to grow him in that position. So whether that's been a loose forward or guys that are really young, you bring them into the environment, you're able to, I guess, upskill them, being able to have guys that are around him to be able to upskill his game knowledge and understanding of what it is to be a 12. But he definitely has traits that I think are very different to what the other 12s do have. And I think collision area is a big part of that, and his breakdown turnover work. It's more like, honestly, it's been a lot of areas sometimes where he's just been able to win games with that kind of breakdown turnover work, which we've seen from Artie Sevilla a lot in that turnover breakdown area.
He'll definitely be in an All Blacks 15. Yeah, he'll get an opportunity in a black jersey, and then I suppose it's just what presents in terms of injuries.
So you don't think squad?
Potentially, I think he potentially could. I just think it's just too. I don't have enough data myself to make an opinion, because what are we, 5? They've had a bye as well, so 5 games in, and obviously played on the wing on the weekend. So I think he'd need to get back to 12. But in terms of a squad, a bench position, being able to cover that many positions, probably could even cover 7. He's in the conversation. He's definitely in the conversation.
Now, when we think about combinations, there's another combination that's going really well in Super Rugby over the last couple of weeks. Since Shaun Stevenson's return, it's pretty clear that Shaun Stevenson and Damien McKenzie, in a similar way to the way that you were talking earlier about fullbacks not necessarily needing to be the second pivot, they can play a pure fullback role. Stevenson, Brynner, is looking really sharp.
Yeah, he is. Look, I think we've touched on him a lot in terms of what he brings in. Look, his counter-attack ability to be able to beat people one-on-one is right up there. His distribution skills, his kicking, to be able to do whether it's a long exit kick or attacking kicks. He definitely has the full array of skills to be able to do that. And I think, Shaun probably wants to become an All Black again. And, one good thing around that is you're probably going to be with the number 10 who's playing possibly for the All Blacks and during that June season for the rest of the year with Damien McKenzie. So, look, I look at their combination on the weekend. Look, the first three tries that they did have against the Moana Pasifika, both of them were in tandem in terms of being able to attack with ball in hand or an attacking kick or something in and around those two working together. There's
the Shaun Stevenson highlights and the impacts that we see, but it's when he's in the backfield, and I compare it to like a Billy Slater and a Cooper Cronk. Like he seems to, him and Damien are close off the field, and they seem to know each other extremely well on the field. But don't underestimate what it does for a Quinn Tupaia, a Daniel Roan, or Anton Leonard-Brown, because the defences have to look out the back. They know he's not going to be a second pivot. He is hovering to enter and inject himself into the line or draw defenders' attention to create space for others. And I think that is one of his biggest assets, is how he can make others' lives easier. And because he just draws so much attention. He's a freak. Like he is a freak. You talk about a triple threat game. He's got it all, and a massive boot to boot. That sounds ridiculous, but yeah, so I think he's, he could definitely play international rugby at 15. But I think he's a massive opportunity to be world class at wing at international level as well, and play like a Richard Kahui, Ben Smith sort of mould in terms of that contestable kip game, but just being able to hover and roam and draw defenders' eyes that may open up for him, or may open up for other people.
He can, but Bryn, realistically, given what we've seen over the last year or so with Shea Fihaki getting selected above him into the squad, and the way that they've built their squad, the number of wingers they have, the fullback option that they've got in Will Jordan, do you think that there is any chance that'll happen?
Look, there's always a chance, and Jip always touches on it around your currencies only with how well you play. And Shaun's probably touched on into he's already touched on it in the media, talking around controlling what he can control, and then the selectors then have to make the decisions if they want to be able to pick him. But you do look at last year when Shaun was a little bit injured, and talking with him, he was a little bit injured, probably didn't be where he wanted to be, but the styles of how the All Blacks want to play. They have a style, and with the likes of Shea Fihaki coming in, you've got to see that there's a particular style that they like. So whether there's going to be a few injuries, you never know what's going to happen with the outside backs. If there are injuries, then and Shaun keeps playing well, then there's always an opportunity for him to be able to be in and part that in and around that All Black squad. But I think at this stage, based on the fact that he has played well for a long period of time and he wasn't selected last year, I think a few things are going to have to go his way in terms of injuries for the All Blacks to maybe get him in that squad, which I don't believe is the right thing, but you always probably base it around your warranty, your consistency, and Shaun's done that for a long time, but it's all dependent on what I guess the selectors want and how they want that fullback winger to play.
He's clearly made a decision though as well in terms of the Japanese thing, but I don't think you work that hard to bring him back if he's not in the frame.
I got the feeling that maybe they were making a stand over from a contractual point of view. If you let everyone go, then you're going to end up with contracts meaning nothing. But do you feel like there's more to it than that?
No, you might be right. Like, I don't know the ins and outs of that. I'm just saying, like, he's been brought back. He's in New Zealand. He's a world-class player.
Yeah.
I think I don't think the All Black coaches are going to take anything personally around the Japanese thing. If he's playing well enough, I think they'll pick him.
Yeah.
Of course they will. And I think for reasons that Bryn just outlined in terms of, his injuries and frustrations last season, may have played against him. But at the end of the day, we want to go through 100% test wins this season. And if he's, available and he's playing the best, then, I think he'll warrant that selection.
Now, with him and Damien carving up against Moana Pasifika, the other part of that was, what on earth happened to Moana Pasifika? Like, where's the team from 2 weeks ago?
Oh, look, I think there was two things that we haven't seen from Moana Pasifika, and one was they've actually tackled at 90% and been really accurate in their phase play defence, and it just let them down. And look, the Chiefs could do this to any team as well. Like, let's acknowledge how good the Chiefs were rather than Moana Pasifika being bad. But they've had low penalty counts and a high tackle success, and they have been efficient at slowing ball down at ruck time. Moana Pasifika, that is. That just wasn't there. And sometimes you see that with teams coming off the bye. Like, you almost sometimes don't want the bye. You almost, for instance, for the Blues, the bye is great. Do you know what I mean? Like, you actually just want to get out of the bubble and take a breath and, make a plan of how they're going to attack the next part. But for teams that, you beat the Hurricanes, they probably should have beaten the Highlanders. That rhythm, it just felt like their rhythm was, not there. It definitely came back though. And so I don't think it's panic stations. The way they fought back into that game and got some respect to the scoreline, I think shows the growth massively, because I don't think we would have seen that, from Moana Pasifika in previous seasons.
We also saw with the Drua 2 weeks ago, we basically had a show where we did nothing but talk about how great Moana Pasifika and the Drua are. Then they've fallen off as well. It is so hard to stay consistently up in a competition against teams, especially on the road.
They're not performing away from home, but that's always been the Achilles heel, unfortunately, with the Fijian Drua. They can't get the performance like they do at home, away from home. And so you look on the weekend against the Force, they got out to in 20 minutes, be able to score 3 or 4 tries, and it's pretty much, it's pretty hard then to be able to try and come back and win the game, which they weren't able to do. And then you look at probably the Moana Pasifika in that first half, they gave away 8 penalties within the first 30 minutes. And so if you're going to give the Chiefs multiple opportunities to get into the 22 area or being able to hold on to the ball, with the likes of Damien, Leroy Carter, who's had a great start to there, Shaun Stevenson, and the way that those forwards are interplaying with each other, it's going to be hard to be able to defend them. So I think, if they were able to more so Moana Pasifika, deal with those ill-disciplined issues, then you see the second half where they score 4 tries on the run before Takiaho scores at the end. So
there's like some critical base stats that all teams that lost by a high deficit are not meeting. So if you look at the Blues, set piece scrum 75%, line out 58%. The Drua was 72% at line out time. Moana Pasifika were 57% at scrum, 89% at line out. So you can't get your game going. And even if it's not your ball, you then receive a penalty. So it piggybacks teams up the field. Also, those 3 teams all had a high failed exit rate. So they're putting pressure on themselves, they score points, and then it leads to an error, and then the opposition just gets that momentum back. So I think for all of them, they're beating themselves in a way, that's a positive in my head because you're in control of that. If oppositions were just on top of you and you're just getting destroyed, that's quite a hard place to make a plan to come back from. But in all aspects, those are all their own controllables. If there's that fear or that panic that they're going to miss out on the finals, it can create more tension and anxiety, performance anxiety. And I suppose it's more, when teams, this is why you see teams when they're out of the playoff race, they all of a sudden start playing well. Because we've got nothing to lose. And I think that's the mindset they need, is we've got nothing to lose. Everyone's already ridden them off. There's the back's against the wall. This can potentially be quite freeing for them, and they can go back to what they know. And I think that's all they need to do is actually just control what they're in control of. Don't be too fixated on the opposition. I know this sounds really crazy coming from me, but I think just focus on what they can control and what they can deliver. And I think the pieces will come back, and the confidence and the momentum will build from that.
Now, the other game on the weekend, which we saw one team kind of fall off slightly, was the Highlanders versus the Reds. The Highlanders, they're up on the scoreboard. Maybe didn't appear to be dominating the play, but certainly up on the scoreboard for some time. And then the Reds came through. Let's have a look now at our Ashley and Martin turning point, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Where did it change? And there were 3 front rowers in the commentary team on the weekend, so this is a good place for us to know exactly where it changed.
It was a weekend where you could appreciate the importance of a scrum.
Yeah.
Because when you can't get it right, it can just compound on you. And it was the turning point of the game. Like the Highlanders went ahead at half time, but I actually think they'll be a bit annoyed when they watch that first half back for the amount of opportunities they left out there. They could have, definitely scored plenty more points than they did. But yeah, I don't see anything else in that game other than it was just, I felt so sorry because Ma'u gets subbed, then there's the injury to Kotai, have to come back out. The ref's already got his opinion. So even if you sometimes even when you sort something out, if it goes down, he's got no option just to keep penalising. And it just gave easy access. And the Reds are really efficient in the 22. We know that. They've got a great driving maul, but they've also got the patience and the smarts around the pick and go game and not looking to, just chance their arm with crossfield kicks or anything. So, but without the scrum failing, I think, the Highlanders still statistically, probably were higher than the Reds in most aspects, especially in attack. The one area they did drop off, which is very unlike them, when they go well, they're normally the team that kicks the most. And they only kicked 400 metres to the Reds 730, and that was a difference, but they were making a lot of breaks from deep. So there is context to that. But with those breaks and I suppose that ambition to have a crack, it led to 20 turnovers as well. So it's just finding that balance for them. I still think they're a real red hot chance to find the momentum and get things going again. The Reds are a good side.
The efficiency of when they're inside that 22. Now, they went into the 22 6 times for 5 tries and they're at 83%, which is a massive stat in terms of being able to be efficient with the way that they are playing. But what I do enjoy, and when I saw with them playing the Crusaders as well, is that their interplay jip has gone to another level with their forwards. Their tip balls, their balls in the inside, the out the backs, and then the swinging motion of their backs as well. It just seems like they're a lot more attacking and being able to ask a lot more questions on teams' defences, where I think we've probably been accustomed to seeing in the last previous years is that, they went around the corner off line of Tate McDermott and been able to, I guess, be very one-dimensional in that area. But I've been very impressed with their attacking way that they had done it this year. And I think Kalani Thomas, he was outstanding on the weekend in terms of, I guess, that the forwards doing their job up front gives the likes of Thomas to be able to, I guess, snipe around and, I guess, influence the game like he did on the weekend. So, yeah, they've got a lot of ingredients, which I think which will take them deep into this competition. But I think, the consistency, can they continue for the duration of there, because they've had a great start.
To rest the number of key Wallabies and rotate the squad, that's a big win for Les Kiss. Like that, to go to Dunedin and win against the Highlanders side that, you know, is full of confidence, I think that was a statement game for the Reds, a big statement in terms of, you know, whether they're at home or away, wherever they finish in the table in the playoffs, they are a genuine threat. And like Mick Wright, get him back, and that team is, I think, 10 to 15% better.
Wow. They're already going all right.
Yeah. Oh, but like he is, you talk about that attack and that interplay, he is such a key cog. He's so like Michael Hooper, you know, like that ability, his speed, his ability to turn up in the right place. He can play in the wide channels, he can play in the tight, he can get you turnovers defensively. He is a little bit of that glue and that flair and that spark that seems to, you know, I suppose, be the finishing touches on a side that fought well for that win. It wasn't all perfect for them. You know, they weren't very good at line-out time, but most sides aren't against Fabian and Holland. He is tough to get it over, but they found a way to win.
They've got lots of options too with their kicking. If it's not Liner, it's Daungunu, it's Paisami. They seem to be able to exit in multiple ways and take the pressure off the person who has pressure on them and allow someone else to take it, get down the right end of the field. And then, like Bryn says, the striking, 56% of 22 entries across the competition, which is the best so far in the competition, better than the Chiefs are at 44%, better than the Crusaders at 51%. They strike.
And the Blues were leading that stat because of the simplicity of their 22 last season. The Reds are no different. They will just keep plugging away. They don't try and overdo things in the 22. They either go to their line-out maul and it goes over, or they score these little tries around the breakdown, which I think is the hardest place to defend. It's all stacked against the defence. You know, you've got to have your hands behind the line. Yeah. You know, you can't have a shoulder into the head and there's someone like diving at your feet. There is an element, I feel like, and this is ridiculous, a suggestion, so, and I know it's never going to happen, but I think you should almost be allowed to have your hands over the line as a defender. Yeah. You know, and as long as your feet are behind the line, I almost feel like they need to be brought back into that contest because I just don't see how you stop those tries.
Yeah, it's interesting when you've got a gap behind the player who's gone over the line and then the ball can just be put forward. It seems wrong.
And everyone's looking at the defenders. Yeah. Like in terms of the officiating.
Yeah.
It's just, I look at it and I just think as a Type 5 member who would have to be around there, that rule of having to have your hands behind the line is just so infuriating.
Yeah. I suppose it's no different to a pushover scrum though, Bryn. You know, like the number 8 has all these people in front of him and then he can just put the ball down if you get into that old-fashioned Zinzambrook pushover, like but even you can kind of obstruct. Yeah.
There's a skill to that. Like we see a lot of butchered tries that should be pushover. You know, like there is an element of that control with the feet. Like just doing that, like there's just no way to stop that. Yeah. But I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying it's weighted in the attack's favour.
And just I've been watching every single game, and you feel if you feel like you're defending that point of the field, like it's just you can't actually dictate it whatsoever. Like you're on the back foot and you look at how I'd love to see what the stats are. Maybe something we can do, go away from the strip. I'd love to see the stats of how many penalties are given away 1 metre or 2 metres from the line, because it just seems that it's unfair and it's too hard for the defence to be able to try and first of all stop the momentum and being able to stop tries, or you get penalised for it. So it is pretty tough. It's been hard to watch. Every time I've been watching, I'm like, if you get anywhere close to that 5 metres line, I'd love to see the percentages of what the advantage call is from most of the refs in this competition so far.
Yeah, well, it normally leads to a try. So I think it would be more about how many advantages are given, because they actually never go to the penalty because they eventually score. But I think, you know, like, are we going to start seeing what we've seen a lot with covering tackles of guys purposely trying to knock the ball out from behind as they're trying to... Christian Leo Willie did a nice one on Mark's layer of knocking that ball. Is it going to get to the point where you almost got your knuckles clenched, and if someone's close to the line, you just try and punch it back? Yeah. You know, as they're lunging. Yeah. Because I honestly, I've been racking my brain all weekend around this, and I just don't, like, you can't stop it. Like, you can't get into anyone, and you can't really create any other drill other than to try and displace the ball.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't even get lifted. It's like slid.
Yeah, it does seem a bit off. There's something wrong about it. Right, let's look forward to this weekend, tipping for round 6. And there were a few of you got some good tips on the weekend within the tipping competition, but goodness me, I had a shocker.
I only got 3, I think.
You still jumped up the ladder though.
Did I?
Yeah, you went up to 68 from 72, so you were making moves with 3. That shows how the rest of the competition's going. Everyone else is moving back like me. So let's have a look at the games this weekend. And of course, you get tickets to these games if you get the QR code below and give that a scan and buy tickets to the local games. The Hurricanes versus the Waratahs. The Hurricanes returning from the bye-brinner. Hurricanes in Wellington. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think the Hurricanes will get their win. I think, look, having Taiwa Lomax and Asafa Moore back, I think it's the 2 guys that they've definitely missed. And I think they'll bring a bit more more power and I guess set piece dominance as well. But I think, look, the Waratahs on the weekend, beating the Brumbies, I think, look, they hadn't won against the Brumbies, I think, for a long period of time. So the confidence that they keep building, it's not going to be a foregone conclusion at all. So I think the Waratahs will be wanting to go with Wellington, knowing that the Hurricanes have had a bit of a slow start, that they can really see a great opportunity to get a win in New Zealand, which has probably evaded them for the last couple of years.
No, I think that win against the Landers is going to kickstart the Canes. I think they're going to find their mojo. I think they found their mojo at the breakdown. I highlighted it before the Highlanders game on the weekend, what they did around their cleaners and their access to the cleaners to allow Duplessis, Karifi and co to get those turnovers. I think if they can keep doing that's where they were strong last season was from turnover ball, and they just are electric. So the more they can do that or get the penalties to piggyback themselves up the field, it's a win for their style of play and their mojo. And I think where they've got to be careful is make sure they secure their own breakdown, because they are ambitious and they like to play at a fast pace. The Waratahs actually look best in counter-attack and turnover ball. When they're in structure, they're actually, I think they're a little bit clunky, not to be disrespectful, but it's almost too prescriptive. They're not really reading the defence. But when they get a turnover from a breakdown or a counter-attack, a little breach, it's almost like that's when they're like, oh yeah, let's play. And they are so dangerous when they're in that mindset. So I think it's going to be a tight contest, but I think the Hurricanes 1-12.
Right, Brumbies Highlanders?
I'm sticking with the Landers. There was enough in that game. I know the scrum, put the scrum aside.
Canberra?
Yep. I think there's enough in this Landers side to get a result in Canberra.
Okay, what do you think, Bryn?
I'll go with the Highlanders. But, I look probably what Stephen Larkin said at halftime for the Brumbies against the Waratahs. When they changed their focus and been able to go through them, they talked around trying to go through them, which they got a lot of pay in that second half. But obviously a yellow card probably stunts that momentum. And they're always good in Canberra, especially with their win success rate when they play over there. It's really hard to beat. But look, I think the Highlanders can sort out their turnovers. Look, they've had 20 on the weekend, and previously the week before it was a high rate as well. So they are making multiple opportunities. Tangi Tau is having a great year. They're getting multiple opportunities to try and, I guess, use him, and they are making a lot of line breaks, but it's that last pass or it's that last decision. It's that decision-making and when they've made a line break or something like that, they just haven't been able to get right. So if they can, chop that down into half, into 10, then they probably start scoring a couple more tries and it makes it a lot easier for them. So I think that'll be the important thing for the Highlanders this week, just dropping down those turnovers, which has probably been an Achilles heel for them the last 2 weeks. So I'll pick them basically going to get that right this week.
Okay, so I'm imagining you're both going Crusaders versus Moana Pasifika in Christchurch. That seems like a fairly straightforward pick.
Yes.
Okay, let's go and have a look at the Reds versus the Force then. That seems relatively straightforward, the Red in Queensland.
Yes.
Yep, and same for you?
Yep. So.
Rightio. Well, that's what's coming up this weekend in rugby. So thank you very much for tuning in here at the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Please send us an email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz. Get into the YouTube comments. We'll read them. We'll react. We'll answer your questions where we can. And if you've sent questions in recent weeks, we will get to them. We keep an archive of them. We just get to them bit by bit by bit. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks to everyone who helps us put the show to air. Thank you very much for tuning in. And thank you very much to Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres for supporting the show. Mā te wā.